Welcome to the final edition of this season of the CivBattleRoyale. My name is Dawkinzz, and this is episode 54, Shattering the Chains of Fate. As the cylinder spins slower and slower, scrappy leaders work with less and less to claim a victory. A tale of inches told forever. Starting on turn 1145, let's get right into this. Hey everyone, it's Lunar again. I hope you enjoyed the last part. My proofreaders are close friends of mine who I always wanted to get into a part, so I thought I might as well use my blue cassette privilege to get them to assist me in this final episode. There's a lot to unpack here, but I implore you to follow along for the brutal personal hell that is late-game Civilization V. My friends joining me on such a journey are Jay and Robert, first-time narrators, and who honestly have been so supportive of me and my work as I toil away with turn times and crashes. Finally, as someone who went through this all, I thank each and every one of you for guiding us through this journey. This has been an emotional set of months, and honestly, I'm so happy to be in such a welcoming and open community. Thank you. This intro OC is highlighting the amazing literary work on the sub, and a particular nice thing to read after the part drops. Good job, JDT. I don't know what to say. I find it rather nice to brag about the fact that my community has beautiful map makers, and I always love your work. Thank you, Varia, and all of the other map makers as part of the community. In fact, all of the OC creators. We really love having you here, and it's really what makes this community great. So thank you for being here, and let's continue. At the time of writing this, Lunar said, "The power ranking slide isn't here, but I predict the Moors will be beaten by the Kazakhs. I wonder how high the deviation is." Lime later notes, "Never underestimate the power of the Gwei, and as seen here, the power rankers agree. They have Gwei as number 1. Be careful." And with a snap of flames and a few thousand Kazakh hover tanks, the Eastern Indian Front collapses even more. For those hoping for a Zimbabwean hold on India, nothing is likely to save them. Many cities are in the red due to total war, and their core is very fragile. Some nuclear hellfire around the former Marathan capital of Raga doesn't spell that these tiles are even worth keeping. Let it go, Zimbabwe. Let it go. It seems that Merv and Pokhara flipped, with Nisa very likely to flip soon. The Kazakh armies are definitely thicker than anything Zimbabwe has in this scene. Unless Oblate Khan moves his units to protect the slowly crumbling Western Front, I doubt this front line will be able to hold up to the onslaught of a mobilized Uruguayan navy. Both sides are desolate. There's more civilian units here than army units, and that ratio decreases as more and more units are bombed away. I swear, the more I look at this, the more I see desperation on both sides. It seems that they sued for peace the turn they were allowed to and are now building their army up. Unless Central Europe is full of Nexi, then I expect this war to turn Kazakh's favor in 9 more turns when total war strikes again. Uruguay's aggressive campaign seems to be ready to strike east and go through the juicy and relatively undefended northern Zimbabwean lands. Thankfully, it seems the offensive Uruguayan units are limited to a single giant death robot and dozens of air units flying overhead. Said position of air units is a bit risky, but Zimbabwe is desperate to protect their core as enemy units trickle in from all sides. I don't think safe is a word in their playbook anymore. A heavy amount of units in this scene can rapidly strike and do damage, but there's not enough of a task force here yet to take Japan altogether. Although, the unseen units off-screen might be the deciding factors, so for now at least, Japan is divided by 2 gigantic powers vying for dominance in the Asian theater. Success here depends almost entirely on how well Moorish units can assault the Kazakh core. Right now, the Kazakhs represented in this glitched screen by Parthia seem to have made peace with everyone but Zimbabwe, who are beyond occupied due to the Uruguayan aggression. Do not take this as safety, as with every scene, the time until total war is reissued grows ever shorter. Use your time well, Zimbabwe. Also to note, Uruguay is at peace with the Iroquois, and the Moors are only fighting the Iroquois. It seems everyone made peace with all their most dangerous adversaries to buy them some more time before the eventual rematch in several turns. The Kazakhs seem to have anger issues as they devote too much of an army to the Middle East to make it impossible to defend cities of Circesium and Kuchan. I'd think that army would be better used north, Able. In other news, wow, Zimbabwe evaporated like water on a barbecue. Their units congregate around the former Omani lands as they retreat to their core, broken and bruised. Uruguay appears to be mounting an attack against Zimbabwe in the small gap where they aren't at war with the Kazakhs or Iroquois. Taking quick advantage and perhaps purchasing a few units, Uruguay assaults the city of Massaquese with swaths of nanohive units as their army grows. It seems the power of air warfare wasn't passed down to Zimbabwe as almost all units are unharmed. They are at war, as we just saw. So, what's the hesitation, Matota? Being bombed out of existence must be a blessing, as it seems the former city of Pune has created enough open space for Zimbabwe to push back the units from Circesium. This was not a peace treaty. Those units are gone, and I don't know if you've noticed, but there's no replacements. Not anymore, at least. And with a spin of the cylinder, Sanguishmar and Merv evaporated as the demilitarized land between the twin blue dragons and Zimbabwe grew and grew. There were so many stories in this part of the world that just disappeared, leaving behind land no god wishes to trek. A fitting end. Also, fun fact, Newfoundland was just conquered by the Moors. The Navy is slowly but surely winning versus the Iroquois. Also, the next turn is another wave of total war. Matota made a difficult call and submitted to the Kazakhs to give a large buffer state between them and the rampaging Kazakhs. Tactical usage of open borders means that they can reinforce their front while providing an ample distraction to the Moors. There's too much to unpack from these last 5 turns, so let's just move on. Damn though, clever move. On this front, the land ignites and Nexai push deep into the core, pushing the front up to Aspara. Their core is at shooting distance at this point, and Astana looks like the prize in the Moors' eyes. The armies here are full of great engineers with no wonders left to build, and workers with no purpose as the battles push deeper and deeper inland. Subtract the civilian units from this image, and you have the image of a very, very broken Kazakhs. The clock ticks on, and the shadow grows over the Asian mega-empire. Janitorial duty was issued here, and almost all exclaves were swept into larger, prettier empires. Aside from the large contingent of Navakat hover tanks, the Himalayans look pretty empty, and Allahabad seems fragile. This doesn't seem to be a front that Ablai Khan can win, but as always, the mountains prove to be the most valuable defensive building. It seems the lovers' quarrel will be fought in Alaska. Whoever comes out of this battle with territory inland might be able to gobble up a large chunk of their empires, but the resources spent to take the broken and frankly useless northern Canadian lands will come at the cost of the capital. Let it go, Ablai Khan. I swear some of these leaders fight with the brutishness and bitterness of elementary school students. I guess they had a lot of bottled up rage from millennia in the sub. Let's focus on Dlo. Take a close look. Either Zimbabwe's got a taste for exceptionally rare, or they're so desperate to siege Bombusi that they're pulling any and every unit they've got available. Nice of the Kazakhs to lend Nyatsimba Matota a storage room to leave that artillery to rot in. If the Moors join in on the fight, then Uruguay can kiss their little nest in East Africa goodbye. Unfortunately for Zimbabwe, though, the Moors' influence is spreading south, to expand or maybe flee. Up in the northwest section of the world, blood paints the snow, and most of it belongs to the Kazakhs. Cherik Rabat, Balaskun, Akrats, and Orbduzar have been laid to waste, simply ripe for the taking. What did it cost the Moors to create a hook to dig into the Kazakhs nation? Wait, just Ramsa? Perfectly balanced my foot. Continuing down the northern front between the Moors and the Kazakhs, infighting continues to break out, greatly wounding Ekbatana. Zimbabwe's scathing words in an effort to denounce the Kazakhs might have caused them to keep going purely out of spite, because they've begun to push the Moors back via Asak, Suzak, and Nisa. Impressive as they are, the numbers might not be enough. They've exhausted the Kazakh front in an effort to land a few more stabs. Keep that up, and it'll come to bite them back when they least expect it. There's a storm brewing at the eastern front of the map. 8 turns to total war, and most of the Iroquois line has been shredded into heaps of metal and rust. It's been a bloody battle for Uruguay, but come high tide, the Nexi and Nanohives that have been stationed at the front line will wash away the remains. Hiawatha sweats in his bunker as he might have to consider his days to be numbered. Time's running out, and if this keeps up, the Iroquois will be swallowed up when the next bomb drops. The Moors seem to be angry about something. Kuchan and Nisa wound up being flipped by the Kazakhs, who have no desire to give it up. In turn, though, they snatched Ekbatana for themselves. Now that the Moors have a city inside of the Kazakh nation, they ready themselves to take all of it back, stationing rocket artillery, genoswarms, nanohives, and no less than 3 Nexi stationed in Sadak and Otrar to go traipsing into Kazakh land. Where the Kazakhs laid their pieces, the Moors decided the best move was to flip the chessboard entirely. As if flipping the board wasn't enough, the Moors decided to stomp over to Uruguay and snatch one of their toys as well. The remains of what was once Sangameshwar is flipped into Hisanar. You get the picture. Leaving the Moors a station to go snatching land after land from 2 supported fronts. The pincer method, even in futuristic times, old tactics die hard. Meanwhile, Uruguay is preparing to settle a city in no man's land, trying to claim back some of the missing grounds from earlier firefights. 8 turns seems like such a long time away, and Uruguay has decided the best thing to do against the forces is ready themselves another citadel to make more? Surprisingly clever for a civ with not much offense nearby a dividing land. Oh, so that's where all of Uruguay's forces were hiding, laying waste to Kazakh territories. 8 territories have been crushed by the Uruguayan forces, leading giant death robots on ships to claim the lands of the nation to grow. However, Gorkha and Tongu are very close to falling apart, and the Kazakhs seem exceedingly hungry or exceedingly desperate to start taking lands for themselves. Do giant death robots dream of autocratic ideals? Tonight, the Moors are looking to celebrate as the push against Zimbabwe has been ever the tour de force. Up north, though, the Kazakhs are refusing to settle down, wildly forcing back more and more of the Moors and more. Uruguay. Looks like the tactic of going berserk and not backing down has been working wonders for the nation, but Wrath has a bad habit of burning the civilization that fuels them. Total war looms around the corner, 3 turns away. Kazakhs, Uruguay, what exactly have you done? In an odd Mexican standoff, Uruguay and the Kazakhs trade pie and dawe with each other, and that's really it. Workers have been sent off to Karaspan and Canton to rebuild the cities. The robots Gorkha had looming over it by the Kazakhs have just left, specifically to Paye, leaving Gorkha to go licking their wounds. At this point, the 2 combatants are just staring at each other. Finally, we start to see the Kazakh engine running out of steam. Sure, Ekbatana has been flipped again to the Kazakh side, but with the sheer amount of units being overpowered by the forces that the Moors have brought to the table, a bad omen has started to curl over the nation of Kazakh. The Moors have a very greedy, hungry look in their eyes, and the turning point of total war means that Ablai Khan has no units ready to fight. This is bad, sure, but the Kazakhs are known for burning the candles at both ends, so surely they can find a way out of this mess they've made, right? What do you mean there's no more candles? And thus the Moorish curtain has been drawn over the once Iron Curtain of Russia's modern-day Western Front. From Uzkent to Turkestan to Almaty, the Moors have been puppeting cities left and right. With units dwindling on the fronts, the key cities here are Hektomebolus and Uzkent, as that is where the Nanohives and Nexi will most likely next converge on each other. Now the Inquisition returneth, calling Ablai Khan to the monastery. Here, we see what kind of efforts the Moors are putting forward as they advance not only on the Kazakhs but on Zimbabwe as well. Nexi and Nanohives defend Zimbabwe's front line in Central Africa, but also a lot of artillery. In fact, they have so many artilleries. Why does Zimbabwe have so much faith in their artillery to leave it as the only front defender in Chitakite? Will maybe that's why the cities on both sides are burning. But other than lots of zero-health cities along both lines, and even in modern-day Oman and Yemen, those artilleries really are just sparklers in comparison to the big boys waiting in the Moors' line. Surely enough, that line in central Russia has been pushed even farther east. The predictions were correct, and the Kazakhs have been pushed back by the Moors. Pretty dominant effort stuff, I might say, and while it looks like the two have matched units throughout this scene, they don't. After all, I don't think great engineers and great riders can wield swords and axes without some form of magic to stand toe-to-toe. And this is Civ, so no magic here. Only the raw power of technology. The peace talks that were made not long ago have come to fruition, as here we see Uruguay's and the Moors' peace breeding their lack of conquest on each other. But there is one important aspect to take away from this: the nanohive in Delhi. It is in Delhi despite the peace, which means open borders have been established. And look who is right to the north. The Moors have received exactly what they wanted: another open front to assault. The Alaskan Western Front with the Iroquois and the Kazakhs. Such a picturesque view this time of year. And look at that, even more results of the peace. But from Sukumo to Gift Lake and everywhere in between, those units are still there. We may be seeing a calm before the storm, and Siberian storms are known for being blistering and painful. Now the question is, for whom? Would you look at that? The great engineers are running for the hills, unsurprisingly. Nanohives and Nexi sit around Manan, waiting for their beloved cryptocurrency known as health to gush out of the city. Go on, inject those viruses. The Kazakhs don't have good firewalls anyway. Mexico is keeping quiet again. Not the nation, though. They are long since passed away into the great leaderboards. But while both sides amassed units for defensive measures, here you can see a few of the Moors' naval units coasting on by Onondaga and Nawadaga. The Iroquois might be in for a nasty surprise soon as the Moors continue to set their sights farther and farther from home. Here's a good question, though. Are the Moors an overextending empire or a new world leader in the making? Oh, look, Zimbabwe. Those artillery didn't work to defend Chitakite, whatever you want to call it, or Akure, for that matter. And now we're wanting to ship those artillery away off to the museum elsewhere? Or maybe have the good old paratrooper accompany those remaining artillery to their demise. Hey, at least Zimbabwe is building up more biotroopers to defend their home, so that one paratrooper didn't get their upgrade yet then. Got it. Yangchang and Changji are soon to be owned by the Moors. Lovely. As predicted, tons of Nexi funneled into specific cities and attacked the Kazakhs. It won't take long unless the Kazakhs really put a strong effort in defending. That doesn't seem likely though, so maybe you should put those great engineers to use and have them help build some giant death robots or something. This is a view of the Kazakhs' land in eastern Russia. Notice anything? Well, they're working at something. But that's all they're doing. They're working, but not, quote, working. And pretty soon, if they keep up this lackadaisical behavior of building nothing but a few crawlers, no one will be working anymore. Well, some might, depending on who the Moors decide to keep alive in the burning buildings. Also, lackadaisical? I don't think I've ever seen that word before. Cool. Massakwese has fallen, but with some hope shining on the side of Zimbabwe. Tons of biotroopers have come to defend Dolo and Dambarare's borders with Massakwese. Without many more units on the Moorish front, this solid blockade could be enough to ensure Zimbabwe's safety. Meanwhile, here we can see exactly what was being so hyped up earlier. Yangchang was clearly invaded from both the western and southwestern areas by the Moors passing through Uruguayan land. Settler in tow, nanohives are built by Uruguay to bolster some defenses as the citizens look on at the Moors, scared and powerless. The giant death robots serve as good protectors, though, reminding the Moors in Gorka that the people are to be kept safe while passing through. In just 2 turns, like crackers shattering into crumbs, the Moors have snatched up city after city. Now past Anyi, Omek, and Xinjiang, the capital of Hadan sits surrounded by the Moorish legions, afraid of the advanced technology on all sides. Uruguay watches on, Lavieja hearing of the soon-to-be burning conquest of the Moors. At this news, he is frightened of what is to come. Open borders for peace was a mistake, he says, not having expected the Moors to have plowed through the Kazakhs to their capital so quickly. So, the capital city falls in another turn. The Kazakhs have lost their home, and so Ablai Khan flees to Uwajima with tears of anger flowing down his cheeks. He weeps at the burning of his capital, afraid of whatever capital he is moved to will be naught but a temporary prison as the Moors advance further. The workers in Siberia watch as their leader is taken to the coast, pondering if their leader will be put out to sea for safety, as the skittering of genoswarms can be heard in Dogo. No good boys sit there other than the nanohives, and the Kazakh southeastern Russian cities look ripe for the taking. Julu, Jingzhou, and Nanjing, it is all being taken by their new conquerors. As all the citizens watch as more and more is taken, the Kazakhs have received a demand from the Moors, showering of sweets and pastries for their soldiers. Ablai Khan is furious, hearing of the insult to his people, expecting those of the Moors taking their cities to be treated as heroes, and thus resolves to stay in Uwajima no matter the cost. Be it his life, his money, his soldiers, the Moors have thrown an insult on his people, and he will be doing anything necessary to make them regret treating them like an inevitable bug to be crushed. The cities of Uwajima, Yuzuki, Ozu, and Orado are surrounded further and further. The Moors are leaving little recourse, and Ablai Khan is staring death in the face. He expects to meet the Moors head-on in what will be his final battle of his life, and he intends to make it bloody. But wait. Uruguay, what? What, Uruguay? To Uruguay? You have a death wish, don't you? Seriously, you were in the midst of a short tenure of peace with the Moors. While the Moors were taking more cities, you swooshed in and did what? You captured the Kazakhs' capital. That's what you did. Remember the short 10 turns of peace that you would be guaranteed to not have war declared on you again by the Moors? Well, those turns are looking really short now. Sasaki has fallen to the Moors, and surely enough, Karalik is soon to follow. As the genetically engineered war scorpions poised their stingers for their next fight, the last of the Kazakhs hear of Ablai Khan's demise at the hands of Uruguay. The people are watching as the last of their empire crumbles into dust. Uruguay is at it again, stealing Karalik out from the Moors' noses. Not only that, but the Iroquois are mounting a mini-offensive of their own, taking Sasaki from their greedy grasp. Lavalleja and Hiawatha seem to not care despite the warnings of their peoples. The Moors have been insulted in return for their aggression. So in a way, the Kazakhs got what they wanted, just not exactly how they wanted. The artillery is holding out against the Nexi of the Moors. How? Why? Well, the Moors have been subtly building up more units in Uselu and Ugbini, leaving the people of the recently recaptured Massaquesi pleased yet frightened. So far, for a front, Uselu has been rather Usellus. Useless, that's the... You have to see it. It's a writing thing. Just as soon as the people of Ablai Khan let out a war declaration on the entire world, so too did their nation fall. The Kazakhs are no more, leaving one less player in the midst of this game of total war. But Hiawatha is determined to not take any insult backing down and has advanced on Uruguay to take Karalik, rationally thrown to the wayside. And as the news of the Moors declaring war on Uruguay reaches the world, further doom is impending on a global scale. Ablai Khan, you were the inevitable. You were guessed to win it all. You have universally great uniques and had universally bad neighbors. Honestly, your gameplay here was nothing short of human. From your simple beginnings fending off the Golden Horde and Parthian advances, to your tactical destruction of all of your neighbors in endgame. You will be remembered. You will be hated. You will be loved. You were the strongest Asian civilization in CivBattleRoyale history. F. And so, with the declaration of war, the Moors have begun to encroach upon Uruguay's lands in India. Kathmandu and Gorkha have been captured first, showing Uruguay that their idea of swooping in and capturing cities from the Moors was a bad call. So, Lavalleja, are you content with the beast you have angered? Or perhaps you had already resigned yourself to being taken over by the Moors and wished to merely get a head start in some vain hope of victory? Only time will tell. Tlodolo has fallen to genetic scorpions and scythe titans, and while Bombusi is generally safe for now, Masakwese is getting traumatic flashbacks of a few turns ago. Nexai float outside of the bounds of the city out at sea, giving the people a reminder of the new leader that is wishing to overtake them. Like giant pillars of heaven, they are reminded of the cruel and indifferent Abd al-Rahman III, and some in the city, in their broken mentality, view the Nexai as divine reminders of his wrath. Let's take a long moment with the death of the Kazakhs to overview the game. At this point, the Iroquois have once more forced themselves into a choke point and are incredibly unlikely to make any significant gains against the Moors regardless of their stats. Meanwhile, off-screen it seems that the Moors are rapidly developing their new lands despite the sheer amount of puppeted cities. Once they annex them properly, I have no doubt these cities will be useful. But what is useful here? They only have Zimbabwe left, and after killing them, their battle power will be challenged by a navy-focused Uruguay. What is the Moors' next move? Broken. The cities in India have been broken as the tides of eternal war swept over them. For those living in the burning citadels, even basic survival isn't guaranteed. The population of all of India is about as low as it's ever been, and with nuclear warheads resting near cows, it'll take a lot of workers and a few settlers to make this place anywhere near its former beauty. And yet, instead of workers, death robots hover over in the newly settled city of Libertad. The game cannot render all of the broken tiles, only choosing the cluster around the camera. Destruction is spread across all of the old world. Moorish victory comes at a cost, and peace isn't an option anymore. The flames of war will reach the heavens and burn down the sky. From absolute hell with everything going wrong to absolutely nothing. At this point, there's maybe 10 units in this slide on the Iroquois side and 7 units on the Uruguayan sides. Eternal war has its consequences, and in lands without military other than planes, the land becomes lawless. They wish for older times where Métis crashed against Iroquois lands. For a moment, a more merciful leader would have ruled them all. This land could have been an Eden of hope and prosperity, but now it's a nation-state hell-bent on fighting a threat with every able-bodied citizen and robot possible. Military servitude is mandatory in a state where scientific progress is impossible. Similar things are happening on this front where Akure and Chitakete are actually defensible due to mountains and an absence of units. The former Benin unique improvements was bulldozed down, and now nothing remains but war. It's amazing what 70 turns of war will do to a cylinder. The Moorish front, meanwhile, looks rather interesting, as pillaged artillery from former Zimbabwean museums encroached Iroquois Asian cities in an attempt to scare them off the mainland. This assault, while likely to work, is a distraction. As annoying as the Iroquois are, they do not have the resources to take more cities, and so they begin positioning a few defensive nanohives while a more concentrated force strikes south. The flaming, burning hell that is the subcontinent changed hands once more. But how long will this last? How much longer must Delhi flip between angered powers? When I made this map, I wasn't expecting India to become a hotbed of chaos and deceit. I don't think anyone is expecting this from the once quiet subcontinent. While many empires are burning through reserves, the Zimbabwean attack force seems to be cutting through swaths of their formerly owned lands. The Nubian capital of Napata is brought down to one population as the grinding of empires is heard throughout Africa. Is Zimbabwe winning? For now, they are at least. For now. Chibwene and Arcus flipped to Zimbabwe as it seems the Kazakhs have passed on the worker union in favor of an actual army. Provided they assault nothing but cities, they can keep on capturing more and more, but Uruguayan troops begin to embark off India's western front. I wouldn't get cocky, Matota. A Nexai hive strikes that empty core of the Iroquois in a straight pattern, like a wall of flesh. They fight against waves of planes that valiantly begin crashing into the floating cities in hopes of taking them down. This wall of units is likely to mean little, but to push resources away from the resource-strapped American front. With a snap of fingers, the wave is pushed back and the army grinded into dust. Most cities here are near the single digits, broken and degraded due to endless city flips and bombing runs. The city has no legacy left anymore. The libraries built in the ancient era are no more than dust now. What really separates Uselu from Napata, Akure from Bumbusi, Zimbabwe from the Moors? Culture, a long-lost relic, means nothing anymore. Everything is the same now. 10 turns mean little to the parading thoughts of gods, but the loss of the resettled India must hurt. Cities burned down once more to the low single digits. Meanwhile, armies of the Uruguayans and Moors tussled around former Tongu lands, with a lot of nano-hives gathering on the Uruguayan side. Those units can chip away at all enemy adjacent units, so they're likely to turn the unit death into overdrive. This only serves to weaken the Moors more and more. Also, what's this? In case you hadn't noticed, the Moors have realized that jumping over long distances is pretty overpowered and have invested in paratroopers. Sure, they're weaker than all units, but all it takes is one unit to capture a no-health city. Are they setting their sights on the Iroquois? Trading Edo for Uselu and losing all of the Middle East. It seems that Zimbabwe is slowly but valiantly losing. At this point, it's only a few layers of cities until Zimbabwe is ripped apart. This might become a three-way race if this keeps up. Holy... The Iroquois might be tired of owning so little of the land they worked so hard to get. They flipped all cities in this scene down to 5 or less population as they slowly approach the slightly carpeted core of the Uruguay. Although we've seen this cycle before, there doesn't appear to be enough units to maintain the front while a sizable defense force mounts near Barcelona and Garoad. Unless units materialize out of nothing, then it seems like this paper tiger might collapse back to America. Yet again, Nexi are becoming the new hot thing in the cylinder, and those units hit with the power of 2, so we'll keep track of this war. It seems the Iroquois did make some gains off-screen as Moorish Japan and Oceania grew more. At the same time they captured all of India, they swept toward Iroquois. The Moors are not messing around. They mean serious business, but the closer they get towards Uruguay, the more the gigantic fleet near Australia can strike. We notice this disturbing pattern of conquest and reconquest, so from here on, wars are every 100 turns so they can build up. Let's hope that helps wars from turning into meat grinders. All the units here evaporate into ether, with only 2 nanohives remaining near Tongu. I can see some bio-titans off-screen near Bamo, but I doubt they will be able to capture much more than potentially Bago. Once more, the grinding continues. Uselu gets traded for Edo once more as Bumbusi seems to be assaulted from bombing runs. The non-stop pushing force seems to be equal on both sides, so unless something dramatic happens, this will become a grind for a while. This war is looking rather good for the Iroquois, but notice the amount of units around Valencia and La Guaira. Any pushes inward will instantly be flipped. Caracas might flip, but then what? There needs to be more navy and units here to make some gains. Perhaps even a few dozen XCOMs might be enough to sway it in favor of the Iroquois, but I don't think that'll happen soon. Also, notice that Las Piedras is 1 population and has been flipping almost every turn. Good stuff. With the burning of a few dozen units, peace was declared. Remember now that we're declaring every 100 turns. They have 80 turns to carpet up an attack. Hiawatha, you madman, you might be able to keep all of Central America yourself. Uruguay pushes through Acarigua all the way to Macau in a few dozen turns. They might be able to make gains and push against the Moors, honestly, but I'm not putting my marbles on any significant gains unless something insane happens. Further south, aside from the usual amount of hellfire, it seems that Uruguay have asserted their claim over the entire coastline. Funnily enough, that's enough land due to the bombed city of Luoyang for another city. It seems even life can be birthed from the absolute chaos that is the cylinder. Pushing the Horn of Africa to recapture Chibwene seems like a move made to appease the people and inspire confidence in the Zimbabwean army. Without a doubt, that army that once filled many of the tiles in the crumbling empire have been shot away, and there's little coming back. No amount of museum antiques will be able to save you. And with that, it's a 3-way war between the Moors, Uruguay, and Zimbabwe. The Iroquois have opted to build up against whichever mega empire emerges from the old world. Biding time is about all anyone could do in Hiawatha's position. It seems the Zimbabwean attack strategy of attacking different flanks is working out, as now a large army is beginning to form in the Middle East to capture only one city. This leaves more time to amass more armies. This game of whack-a-mole has to end soon. The cylinder turns slower and slower. The bandage was ripped off as the subcontinent is now home to a battle, but with a couple of artilleries, cyber subs, and one crawler super unit in Punta del Este. Once more, chaos returns to the subcontinent. The bandage was ripped off as the subcontinent is now home to a battle, but with a couple of artilleries, cyber subs, and one crawler super unit in Punta del Este. Once more, chaos returns to the subcontinent. Once more, mountains prove to be the best defense as armies run through the gap to try to capture Yang Chang's air force. Meanwhile, there seems to be an absolute one-sided battle in China proper. I truly believe there's more soldiers here in this screenshot than all of the Iroquois. Lavalleja isn't messing around. He wants to dethrone the beast that is the Moors. It seems even artillery units are capable of pushing back the armies of Zimbabwe. They opted to build XCOM units in a defensive war, which is interesting. If the idea is to confuse the AI, then spamming these units will cause the units to crowd in areas not in the front. No matter how long these guys fight the Moors, they always seem to be able to fight against enemies 10 times their size. This season seems to have civilizations capable of taking out gods. It's honestly rather astounding to watch. Oh, Uruguay has also got the smart idea to build XCOM units after seeing the paratroopers earlier, and yeah, he used them. Next scene. In 2 turns, they began pouring in enough XCOMs to take all of the Zimbabwean core. The capital flips, moving to the coastal city of Kami. All the cities north seem to be okay, as the focus of the landing seemed to focus on the capital. In the turn before this, there were almost 20 of them filling these lands, and more are coming in. Lavalleja, you freaking madman, you might have just ended the war. You might have single-handedly taken out the threat that confused the Moors for the past 2 parts. Folks, Zimbabwe might just be out of the game. With all the southern cities captured, the capital of Thulamela begins to be approached by nanohives. No artillery or spaceship parts can save you anymore. Moorish and Uruguayan assaults in the north are also capturing key cities and splitting up the remaining army incredibly thin, as the entire reservoir of XCOM units stand outside the burned city of Massakwesi. Usello burned to ash as the city count went down even more. Kiteve and Wadi al-Ash is all that remains. The battle goes down to the final 3. At the cost of total chaos, the burning clouds become all too common in Africa. The air smells of soot and burned metal, and the realities of total war become all too real. Defense around Essie becomes essential as the denizens of the city hope to repopulate the nuked and broken African cities. Sapele, nearby, is safe only due to the Air Force and disturbingly high amount of artillery units. Be it paratroopers or artillery, it seems like the AIs love to build these units no matter what. They don't become obsolete, require no resources, and are easily the cheapest units. Perhaps the destroyed production in the weak regions of the world should build these until yields improve. The core isn't entirely empty. In fact, the core is a monoculture of Nexi and workers with little difference. Europe is the hospitable utopia at this point, with even smaller cities containing tens of millions of people. Kiteve watches as the Arabian Peninsula along with northeastern Africa lights up in flames. The last Zimbabwean city is up in flames, and as the Moors push on Uruguay's Central African front, it looks like Lavalleja is going to be pushed out of Africa entirely. Here we see suborbital bombers being stacked, and the Asian theater is being engorged by further and further Moorish presence. But hey, Ramen, why are you copying Uruguay? What's with all those artillery? Are you going to kill them with irony? And with this, Kiteve falls to the Moors. Zimbabwe is gone. The end of another of the big players in the world has come. The nation and its very concept has found its Zimbabwe to obliteration at the hands of the cruel and oppressive Rahman III, depending on whose perspective. I think they're the good guys. The nation wasn't even laid to rest peacefully either, but with a giant roaring funeral pyre on the Arabian coast. Zimbabwe. You have made it to 4th place. Compared to Ablai Khan, placing below 3rd for you was not a long surprise. Many people noticed how little work you needed to do pre-endgame. You had to crush the Congo and hold the southern tip of Africa, and well, that was it. You had overwhelming stats due to isolation. In the end, when the armies of hell crashed down against Zimbabwe, it took units teleporting into his lands for Matota to admit defeat. Matota, the sub awaits you with open arms. F. So much Navy. And to think this is a fleet owned by Uruguay and not the Iroquois. From the Philippines all throughout the waters around Australia and Japan, La Vieja looks ready to obliterate the world with a navy like that. If anyone here knows World War II history, though, and judging by this as CivBattleRoyale, I think all of you know World War II history, naval firepower can falter quite easily to the power of exterior forces. An Iroquois settler roams around in the lands of Bombusi, wondering where he is supposed to settle. As war and smoke ravage the lands around the cities, Uruguay looks to be mounting a decent offensive on the Moors. But now, how effective can it really be on them? Considering the units resting currently in Ido and Ogbini, it will take a small amount of time before Uruguay will most likely feel some comeuppance. As XCOMs take their first lodging in the citadels between Delhi and Bella Union, the smoke settles a bit around the cities. Although robot infantry residing in Mertobe are looking on, making calculations as to how bloody combat will be sieging those highly defensible cities. Anye flips once more to the side of Uruguay, but other than that, this part of the world is looking like a strong stalemate. Asia looks like it's going to have much more bloodshed from here on due to the decent carpeting on both sides. Nelatale is captured by the Moors, and a settler from Uruguay looks to settle new lands. Although at this point there aren't really any new lands to settle. The smoke all around Central Africa makes it hard to tell though. From Martula to Dolo Dolo, even with satellite surveillance, it might as well be new territory from how much pillaging has occurred. Based on how many nukes and stuff have gone off all that pillaging, it clouds the skies. It's nothing, it's just constant darkness. Uruguay's XCOMs between Delhi and Bella Union hold strong, and with a few above La Bla, it seems that Uruguay wants to combat the Moors and hold them off. But robot infantry look on in the distance. The robots use their scanners and see the elite soldiers, and if they could, they would chuckle. Anye is surrounded by nanohives as Uruguay uses Navaket and Ju to wisely help in transporting units to defend ownership of Southeast Asia. However, as XCOMs, nanohives, giant death robots, and more plain old artilleries prepare to defend the cities and launch an assault, it is very clear that the Moors have some form of competitor on their hands. How viable is that competitor to stand toe-to-toe with them, though? That is yet to be determined. As flames ignite the desert, the city of Owo has in fact stockpiled a large number of suborbital bombers. Finally, the city will be able to determine just what it is that they have noticed all around them for miles. All that fire and smoke makes it hard to see, after all, as the Moors do the best to repair the land and appease their own sanity. Blood and fire has coated their wake, and with Owo firmly in the hands of the Moors for as long as it has been, it is time they prepare for the skies and leave the land to the people. That is quite the navy the Iroquois has. Apparently Hiawatha feels that any conflicts will be fought out on the ocean, as their lands are decently populated by units, but not enough to sustain assault for too long. The people of Canastagona, Can't Stand Ya, and Shashare look at the Moors across the Atlantic Ocean, fearing the impending conflict that will be held using the sea as their playground. Central Africa is up in flames again, and the Moors and Uruguay continue to duke it out. Just as Owo is prepping suborbital bombers for the Moors, Uruguay is also stockpiling them in the city of Amborhimanga. For all you weebs out there. Owo versus Manga, how appropriate. The two nations are readying themselves for aerial combat on a large scale, and soon the atmosphere may be cluttered by combat planes that coat the sky. Smoke stretches into the sky like candles on a cake. Everywhere the people of Canton and Sabta look, they see nothing but spires of choking gas. There are murmurs in the cities from those hiding indoors of the Moors continuing to assault their nation. People ask how they know, but no one has any idea as to how, merely hearing rumors being spread around. No one can pinpoint why, as the smoke obscures all they see. Uruguay continues its repairs of India as its ex-coms stay around and help keep the people safe and secure. As the cities to the east burn with cinder flying through the air and contaminating the space around them, the people in Uruguay and India look on at their neighbors. They wonder just what they are building, also afraid to know the answer. Uruguay's cities in Central Africa thin out their forces more and more, being able to sustain less and less in the face of the Moors. Meanwhile, as Lavalleja has little forces to defend, he sees the mass of crawlers in Wadi al-Ash and cowers. His Bio-Titan and Ziwa and artillery collection along his front line can't fight against a force like that. If that mass is brought to his doorstep, Central Africa is sure to be lost, and Lavalleja knows it. Delhi ignites once more as the Moors recapture it, and the ex-coms of Uruguay try to keep the city safeguarded. Meanwhile, Kathmandu has nanohives that are on their southern doorstep, the Uruguayan units trying their hardest to ensure the recapturing of the city. Even in flames, the nations squabble and combat each other, despite the lack of visibility. Agni and Macau are being ordered by Lavalleja to remain calm, even as the skies are coated gray. The Moors don't seem to be able to match them in offenses, but the nanohives of Uruguay can only last so long, and are better on the defensive than offensive. So, with them as their only defenses, those cities in Uruguay's Southeast Asia are left with little smart choice here but to defend. Ziwa and Barwe being captured was exchanged blow for blow by Uruguay recapturing Dolo Dolo and Bombusi, although from the looks of the ex-coms in the land of Ogboni and Oriula, it won't last long. Maybe those units in Castillos and Thulamela could make a difference. Ex-coms stay hunkered down in the citadels in Delhi, hoping that their comrades will save them. As they wait and hope, Uruguay preps its forces, readying to charge back towards the mountains to reclaim the land they've lost. It's only a matter of time before the clean air is stained gray once again by the pillaging and warfare. After losing part of their coastline in Southeast Asia, Uruguay prepares to assault the Moors again. Unlike the other areas of Asia, however, the Moors are establishing a strong front to hold off the Uruguayan units at their doorstep. This area of the world is looking to become an unbudging stronghold of power where only a battle of inches will make any difference. Uruguay's South American front line with the Iroquois is looking a little lacking. Thankfully, though, the forces stretching from Valencia to Santa Lucia and everything behind them are a veritable fortress of power that will be hard to pierce. That isn't even mentioning the backup raptors kept out at the Pacific Ocean. How do they keep them fed well enough to not eat their caretakers? I'm legitimately curious. Ex-coms, Bio-Titans, and robot infantry galore. It's a good thing that Hiawatha grew used to the technologies of his updated time, otherwise he'd still be telling everyone to use their bows to shoot the genoswarms. What a fool I'd be, he says, for a bulky America that is bulky, and the West Coast looks good as well, if not a little shallow in unit density. The Iroquois are gearing up for something big or looking to outlast, and that is a good effort for either endeavor. Getting some real Chilean vibes off of this African conquest, I'm telling you. Although the west coast of southern Africa, Chidama and Nyunguza are captured by the Moors, but by not many forces. Only one crawler stands between the Zero Health City and Uruguay, and unless Uruguay really screws this one up, it can swiftly send its units back up along the coast and undo the progress of Moorish soldiers. Oh, India, ignited all over again. It's almost been too long, you know. Uruguay could take these cities back, but the Moors are already sending in workers once more to fix the pillaged land. Despite the slight unit disparity, Abd al-Rahman III is determined to take India once and for all. Or he's just doing the same thing that Ablai Khan did prior to his passing. Foreshadowing? Or mere coincidence? Devastation is everywhere as the Moors keep on pushing deeper and deeper through the array of empty, desolate cities surrounded by nuclear radiation. Seems likely that another push will result in the newly acquired Moorish lands going blue once more, but how long will they be able to keep it up? War strikes the Americas as immediately all of the Caribbean is stormed with units, turning the former Venezuelan capital into a pathetic 4-population city. It seems that no matter what happens, merely stepping on land occupied by another power results in immediate death, as Uruguay seems to be unwilling to attack the Iroquois as they strike on the island. Are they scared? Is the realization that South America is not even safe locking up the local generals? What could be causing this? At the Hawaiian front, it seems that pretty borders are on the agenda, as now all of Japan and Hawaii seem to be owned by Uruguay. There's also a Moorish XCOM that wants to snipe a city in the chaos, but it's likely going to die with all the others. Here's what the Iroquois are doing, amassing a lot of robotic infantry on one-tile islands with no way to strike against the Moors. Good job, Hiawatha. In more interesting news, the density of units here is actually impressive, provided they get over the whole water thing. They have a strong enough force that can push through the mountains to the west and pierce the mediocre defense forces stationed there. We've seen this before, and it will never stop being funny. However, this time there's XCOMs within capturing distance of multiple no-health cities. It seems likely these cities will be flipped until eventually razed. Meanwhile, never forget the best front. No, I'm not joking. The Greenland front is going to be especially important in capturing and defeating the Iroquois. If it's allowed to amass XCOM units, then at any time after Uruguay grinds them down, the Moors can take Iroquois much like they took Zimbabwe. This must be known by Abd al-Rahman, as already bombing runs are seen crashing into Shakare, Ganoge, and adjacent cities. You best be careful, Hiawatha. The coastal Uruguayan colony from China to India is getting assaulted as the Moors up their military production, beginning to have what could be called a carpet in India, and the seedlings of an army beginning to grow in China proper. The time of owning a portion of land in the old world shrinks for Uruguay. Once more, Moorish cheeky XCOMs aim to flip a former Venezuelan city, but little actual progress is made. It seems like the push so long ago is getting undone before us. Watch, it'll end up in America before we know it. Eternal war is hell eternal. Now I can see why Bolivar drank himself stupid in the bar last week. It's depressing to see over and over. With a crack of nuclear bombs and units smashing into the Asian coast, there's little left for Uruguay. The armies that rest in most of the Civ's corps don't seem to be able to make it to the front in a large enough capacity to change anything. And in absence of naval support, desperate tactics seem to be the way forward. This isn't a battle anymore. This is a test of survival, and sometimes having pieces is better off than losing it and losing everything. Look at Zimbabwe. They fought valiantly and lost it all just to die with a flip of a switch. Shikoku put all their cards on the table and only made their empire weak enough for the Kazakhs to roll in. Meitei pushed as hard as possible to the breaking point only to fail when it matters. Sometimes exposing your cards can be tantamount to death. Waiting out the clock seems to be the plan now. Uruguay gets pushed all the way to the southernmost tip of Africa as they hold on to Japan and all of modern-day Vietnam. They don't even dare to attack, even with their power armor infantry posed just outside of Chidama. No, survival comes first. Okay, let me level with you. This is getting tiring. We've been going through almost 300 turns and we've seen great things. The Kazakhs collapse earlier, Zimbabwe getting XCOM power dropped in a rather amusing and sudden method. But the thing we've seen the most is the status quo. It's hard to get excited seeing units amass on a front only to disappear the next turn and not know why. The problem is, I know why. The Air Force is seriously overbearing on this map. A lot of suborbital bombers have a range of 30 and an impressive 100 combat strength. All it takes is a few turns of realizing they can target units and we have hundreds of turns of build-up reduced to ashes. It's too much to deal with, and thus the gaps in turns increases more and more as the Air Force grows. This cannot go on forever. Madagascar lit up as for once Moorish force crashed down on the island, quickly sweeping up the former capital of Antananarivo as it continued to intimidate Uruguay. There's no peace deal. Uruguay is just standing there, menacingly. As if they reshuffled their deck, Uruguayan soldiers were all replaced with XCOMs as the war continued to push up towards the unholy land that is Western North America. Some XCOMs are floating and might recapture Tsokanende, but I doubt it'll last unless there's even more units on this front. The armies crushed through the soft Uruguayan core, and we notice a hybrid drone hovering over Mapela. This modern ranged unit is cool, but lacks a large amount of the things essential in modern warfare: survivability. Its combat strength is below all other units. In this war, if you get focused by an air force, you die. When I was figuring out how to make stalemates end, the only solution was to increase combat strength and mobility of all units by almost 10 times, which was not balanced at all. The Air Force and bombing runs are that powerful. It turns 1,000 combat strength into nothing. And here we are, with 100 strength units disappearing in a turn. Southeast Asian cities get traded for the city of Ju. More and more XCOMs flood in from all sides. It's kind of funny, honestly. It seems like all empires realized how good the soldier was after seeing it used once. Is this going to replace the old hover tank meta? Okay. This pile of soldiers is starting to get overwhelming, even if there's a few too many artillery units for my liking. I'm happy to see the sheer variety of soldiers, though. While their core is all Nexi, it seems they are experimenting with new toys against the eternal grinder that Iroquois have become. Okay, you guys are at war. Come on, get out of bed, put your big boots on, and fight. I'm gonna scold you every single time I see this part of the cylinder full of these units. Bah humbug. In one turn, once more Japan is given to the Moors. You know, the fact that I can say that, once again, a land half the globe away got conquered, that this game is dealing with empires so large that even the Mongolian horde pales in comparison. This game is so unbelievably over at this point. At this point, it's just waiting it out. The amount of units seems to be exclusive to above the Himalayan mountains, as now a small amount of units are capable of sniping away city after city with little resistance. Without doubt, they will focus their soldiers down here, and Japan will once more become a darker shade of blue. The Iroquois offense in Mexico will once again collapse. We've seen this exact same geopolitical situation time and time again. To be fair, the Uruguayan armies of XCOMs are far superior to the cluster of artillery near Tirahiro. Wait, didn't I see this before? Tanu and Ju once more flipped to the Moors, except this time without San Felipe and Acarigua. Likewise, the land is almost entirely undefended and likely to flip Uruguayan next turn. The armies in the core are beginning to grow for the Moors. A surprising amount of units near Tongu. Where have I also seen this before? I feel like a broken record. This can't be just me, right? I mean, there's some hybrid drones at least. Yeah, I'm pretty sure these guys didn't get the clue that war was declared. I'm pretty sure they just gave up and are patrolling the beaches, and the Moors, noticing this, opted to not invest a single unit. No reason to invest units against something that isn't a threat, right? Wait, didn't we just see this slide? Yeah, there are more units in Moorish lands and on the coast, but nothing has changed hands. What exactly are they doing? Ah, finally turn 1500. This is the turn I hate the most. No, it's not because of the lack of units here, or the small variety of units. It's, well, complicated. Gosh dang it. Do something. Anything. Please. You see, we've reached 1984 level stalemate. 3 nations, 3 superpowers, in perpetual war against one another. The Moors have always been at war with the Iroquois, who have always been at war with the Uruguayans. It's insane the parallels between it, but I think we can declare a true victor. Alright, for those gazing at the sidebar, it's about time I come clean. This game, at turn 1500, is over. And the Moors have been declared the victors. Now this was a tough decision, but one that I, along with the entire Blue Cassette team, agree on. At this point, turn times are over 3 hours per turn, with little to nothing happening. No units being built, amassing gold and science for no reason, absolute devastation, and a very confused AI. The game is basically broken. It's clear the game is over. and that the Moors are the winners. The alternatives of waiting it out or moving to a smaller map would only delay the inevitable and stall our production line. Speaking of the future, we're opting to take this ending and move on to greener pastures. As I've been recording, the team has been reprogramming civilizations, optimizing game assets, and perfecting the ultimate royale. We're really excited to move on to a thrilling new game. Test runs have been looking very promising, and brand new futures. Season 2 of Civilization Battle Royale X is coming soon. From the entire development team to all of Blue Cassette, thank you for tuning in to Season 1. I thank Jay and Robert for proofreading the previous part and helping me outwrite this part as well. I wouldn't have been able to do it without you guys. All of you. Thanks. See you soon, Lunar. And with that ends Season 1 of the Civ Battle Royale. What did you guys think? I mean, it's been a bit different than Mark II, but this has been a roller coaster. I feel like this part has been crazy with the Moors sweeping through and defeating the Kazakhs and Zimbabwe. It's insane. When I first saw this a few weeks, maybe even months back, I was floored. Jaw on the floor, dropped. We did have that time, again, that 1984 reference, 3 nations in perpetual war. But I think it became very clear at a certain point that the Moors were going to inch their way to victory. It would just take an exorbitant amount of time to get to that point. We are very excited to be getting ready for Season 2. And if you didn't know, a Civ that I made is in it, the Neutral Nation. So already you have a Civ to root for in the next season. We're going to be taking a little bit of a break in between this time. So please recuperate, get a drink of water, and come right back for Season 2. My name is Dawkinzz, and we'll see you next time.